So the goal of this video is to take you through my 8-month e-commerce journey, where I went from someone who knew very little. Pretty much my only experience with e-commerce was as a consumer, someone who bought things online, to where I am now. I'm in no way am I an expert, but I definitely know more of what goes into making an e-commerce business. Now, before I started this journey, I was working as a software engineer. I had taken some time to upskill and I had gone to a boot camp and had successfully gotten a software engineering role. And it was really interesting. I got a chance to learn a lot about tech, but I always had a desire to start a business. And like many people who have the desire to start a business but don't necessarily have the problem they want to solve or the product they want to offer, or the service that they want to offer to the public, a lot of us end up going down the e-commerce rabbit hole. And really, I think there's two reasons for that. One is that commerce is like in our human DNA. There's always been people who had a product to sell and people who wanted to buy that product. The other reason is that e-commerce, relatively speaking, as a business model is easy to wrap your head around. It doesn't mean that the business is easy. E-commerce is very difficult to be very successful in it. But the model itself kind of makes sense. And that's kind of why I went down that rabbit hole. Now, within e-commerce is a large umbrella. There's different paths you can take, and where you start and where you end can be two different places. But you could, for example, if you had an idea for a product, you could design that product, right? You could, if you had the ability, you could make the CAD designs, the prototypes, etc. Or you could hire someone to do that, right? That's one avenue. Alternatively, you could just sell branded items, right? Like Foot Locker. If you think about it, Foot Locker sells a variety of other shoe brands. You could go to Walmart and buy a bunch of branded items and sell them online. I think theoretically that's still legal. So that's an option. You could also rebrand a product. So you could find a supplier or a manufacturer that's willing to enter into that kind of relationship where you can sell their items under your brand name. And you ask, what is the value add? Well, you add your packaging, better documentation, maybe better instructions, better QA, better customer service, better aftercare, whatever. And really, that's the majority of what you see online. Like, we call that white labeling. And like, if you go online, if you go on Amazon, for example, like search for espresso machines, and you'll just see how often the same model machine is sold under like a variety of brand names. And the reality is that, all the circuitry, the device itself is the same, just has a different brand. Right? All of those small businesses have found the same supplier, and they all have permission to sell that product under their brand name, right? And the one that can offer the best, care, aftercare, customer service, instructions, whatever, is going to be the winner in that relationship. And like I said, that's the majority of the things you see online, because it's very difficult to design something new. And I think for a lot of people, they're like, why reinvent the wheel when I can just put my brand on an existing wheel? And that's really, I think, the majority of what you see online. And each of these has different pros and cons, obviously. There's no real silver bullet. And that's just, that's fine. And like I said, where you start and where you end might be two different things, right? If you think about it, if you're going to design a product, if it's successful, you have a chance to make a lot of money, right? It could be very advantageous, but you need to have all of these skills to, design the product. You need to be able to prototype the product. You maybe need to know about 3D printers. You need to make relationships with someone that can make a more professional prototype and make molds. And then finally, you're going to need someone that can manufacture that product, right? But if you win, if it actually, what you think people want and will buy is something that they will buy and no one else is selling it, that's hugely successful. But there's a lot of challenges in that road. Again, if you're going to, rebrand, well, you need to find a supplier or a manufacturer that's willing to enter in that kind of relationship. You need to negotiate prices, right? Your goal is to get the lowest per unit cost without having to buy 10,000 units. So that's a game. You're going to need a place to store it. How do you get it from, let's say, China to the US? Where are you going to store it? Can you offload that to a third party like Amazon, for example? So again, challenges. You're also taking bigger bets with these two paths, right? You're hoping and hopefully you've done your due diligence so that I'm going to outlay this money and take this risk on buying a bulk of this product with my brand name, and I'm sure that when I'm going to sell it all and make a profit. Big bet. If you win, you reap a larger reward. But if you lose and you bet incorrectly, it's a bad bet, you now have a lot of product and you're out money. So again, pros and cons. Now, within these different rabbit holes, these different e-commerce paths, the low-hanging fruit, if e-commerce is low-hanging fruit of businesses, the low-hanging fruit of e-commerce is really this thing we call dropshipping. Dropshipping kind of has this bad connotation. I think a lot more businesses do this fulfillment method that we call lovingly dropshipping. But again, it has like a strange connotation. In essence, if in the other two paths, the challenge is, right, predicting and picking the right product, storing the product, and then getting rid of the product, selling the product, right? But you're taking a bet, right? You're saying, I think this product will sell, and I'm going to buy a large quantity of it. I'm going to take a risk. And in the future, when I sell it, I'll reap the reward. So if your calculations are correct, it will be beneficial. If you've made a poor calculation, you've chosen an item that actually won't sell, then you've now out money and you have all of this product. Now with drop shipping, you get the pros and the cons, like in anything in life, right? The pros are you gain flexibility, right? You establish relationships with different distributors, suppliers, and you can now market these products, advertise these products. But when it comes time to sell them, you don't have to hold large inventories. If a customer wants to buy the product, you then reach out to your distributor, and your distributor performs the logistics of sending that item to your customer. So you gain flexibility, the ability to test a variety of products, but your margins are much less. You're not going to make or reap the same type of reward if you made a big bet and bought in bulk of an item with your brand name. But you gain flexibility, you can test, and you're not having to outlay all of this money up front. So again, pros and cons. And just two quick examples, right? Because again, I feel like dropshipping has a bad rap, and maybe it should, but I think there's a lot of business that operate like this. And as a rule of thumb, anytime I find a business that has a huge product catalog, not all, but I think there are examples, I always ask myself the question, are they holding inventory of all of these items? Often I have to say, it can't be the case. And if they're not, then most likely they have relationships with different distributors so that when you make a purchase, they then have that distributor send the product to you. So I think like guitars, there's a couple big online guitar stores, like Guitar, the instrument, and they sell hundreds. Their catalog is gigantic, right? They might sell 200 different types of guitars. And you have to ask the question, do they have inventory of all of these guitars? Do they have 200 units of 200 different product types or of models? I mean, that's crazy. Think about that. That's so many guitars you need to store and protect, right? We live in a physical world. These items need to be stored in the right environment. Can't be too hot, can't be too cold. They can be broken, so they need to be stored appropriately. And also, this is a lot of money in merchandise that you're storing and holding on to and hoping that you will be able to turn over. Or cigars, for example. That's a perfect example. There's a couple cigar shops I see online where they have maybe 500 different types of cigars you can purchase. Now, I have to ask the question, do they have inventory of all 500 different types? I would guess probably not. They probably have relationships with these different distributors. And when I buy a cigar, maybe they have it in inventory, or maybe it's a cigar that they reach out to their distributor, and that distributor sends that cigar to me. And again, it makes sense, right? Because with cigars, if they, that would be a huge risk to hold all of these thousands of cigars in a warehouse, right? If it's too hot, it's too cold, these could affect the quality of the cigar. Cigars can break easy, so they need to be stored appropriately. It's easier to have these relationships so that in the future, if someone wants one of these cigars, I reach out to my distributor, they send the cigar to their customer, and everyone wins. The distributor gets paid, the website gets paid. And in essence, I think that you see this model used more frequently than people might admit. It's just a fulfillment method. And this is kind of why I chose to go down this road first. I saw the ease, the flexibility, and since this is all an experiment, the advantage of not having to outlay so much money and take such a huge bet to be very valuable. And this is what led me to start my first, e-commerce dropshipping uh, brand business called EV Lifestyles. So business number one was entitled EV Lifestyles. EV Lifestyles would be an e-commerce brand using a drop shipping fulfillment method that would sell a variety of recreational electric vehicles. So think skateboards, bicycles, mountain bicycles, scooters, four-wheelers, really you name it. It's such a growing market. There's really a lot of cool stuff coming out. There's water recreation. There's jet skis. There's electric jet boards, like electric e-foils. There's a lot of cool stuff. And for me, I was living in New York at the time, and I began to notice just the uptick in people riding around in electric, like recreational vehicles, like skateboards and scooters and whatnot. And I just foresaw that this is only going to be a growing market. So it kind of made me, want to take a chance on it. So what I ended up doing, right? So now you've identified your niche. You know the products you want to sell. Okay, well, a couple things. One, you need to go through all of the process of starting any business. Online business, you're going to have to get a domain, and you go through all of those steps. But really, with any type of e-commerce business, you need to get a product. You can't sell nothing, right? You need to have something. So what I ended up doing was I reached out to a couple of virtual assistants that I had worked with in the past. They had done different research assignments for me. And I had them scour the internet. I unleashed them into the internet to find all of these different brands that sold e-bikes and skateboards, and just to build for me contact lists. Go as far out as you can and find as many companies in the US, China, wherever. And once I had these large contact lists, I had to go through the process of trying to reach out and get someone on the phone or via email who was a decision maker in those companies. And the thing is this, drop shipping as a fulfillment method, not every brand is going to be open to it. In some cases, they are not. It's not worth the effort for them, right, to take these one-off orders and do the logistics for you. And in some cases, there's a lot of value add, right? They can save on advertising because they have other people doing the advertising for them, right? Because in essence, every time I advertise their product, I'm advertising their brand, and they don't have to pay for that, and they still make sales. So in some cases, they're open to that relationship. In some cases, they're not. Sometimes they just want to deal with, brands want to deal with brick and mortar businesses because they want a place where people can go and actually see their item, try their item out. So you need a long list because you're going to work through that list, and like anything else, a lot of the options are going to be filtered out. So once I had established 2 or 3 relationships with brands, I went through the process of starting to build the websites and start to do the web design. So in my case, I use Shopify just because it has so many plugins I could add to it, and it has so many features out of the box that it was just very useful and very easy. So you start to build out the website, you start to build out the product pages. Now you got to think with e-commerce, really, to be honest, like you're selling pictures, right? You're selling pictures, and your customers are trusting that the picture looks like the product, and that if the product doesn't look like the picture, they can return it, right? So you really want to spend a lot of time building these pages out to convey all of the features and information about that product. Because in my case, I'm selling high-ticket items. They were items that were worth, in some cases, thousands of dollars, right? So you want to really do a good job conveying all of the features, all of the tech, in this case, that was connected to each product. So I want to fast forward, right? And then just real quick, after you've connected and you have all the design, you need to add the ability for people to find this product, right? That's when you begin to look into marketing and ads, right? And at the end of the day, that is the lifeblood of most businesses nowadays is it's advertising. You need a way to get people to know about your product, whether it's a physical product or a SaaS product, right? There's so many people out there. There's so many buyers, but unless they know what you have, they might never stumble across your website. And it's very interesting with Shopify in particular. It's very easy and seamless to connect your store with Google Ads. And then right when you start to pay for ads and start ad campaigns, you see traction start to, you see visitors start to appear on your website. So fast forward 2-3 months, I'm running this business, and my goal was to make one sale, and I'm able to make one sale and make a few sales. But early on, I began to feel that there was like an underlying flaws in the system that would prevent it from scaling. And here's the thing with a business, right? If something is working with 1, 2, 3 customers, that's great. But you have to ask the question, if we scale the number of customers to 100, will that system still work, right? Or will that system begin to break down? And some of the takeaways and challenges that I kind of identified were, one, that the business lacked automation. Each of these brands, each of these relationships is one-to-one. Each of their sales workflow theoretically is different, right? In some cases, maybe I have a code that I can use to purchase items via their website. Maybe they have a dealer website that I can go to. Other cases, I need to contact a person. Maybe I email them a form that's filled out. Maybe I need to send a WhatsApp message or a WeChat message. Maybe there's time zone differences. So, maybe the person I'm trying to contact and get a hold of is in California. Maybe they're in China, right? So these are problems. If you're only dealing with a few customers, maybe it's not an issue. But if you have 100, 200 customers a day, it's going to become a problem. Also, the goal, at least my goal, is to create a business that's not solely dependent on one masterful performer, right? You want to be able to pull a person out and put a person in, and the business work without any issues. And I just saw that my business as it was would not. The other major issue was inventory, right? My system is not connected to these brands directly. So a product that I'm advertising could be out of stock, but a customer comes and wants to make a purchase, and I won't find out that it's out of stock till I reach out to my particular brand or supplier, and that becomes an issue. Because remember, in this case, my inventory is their inventory. If they have something in stock, I have it in stock. If they don't have it in stock, it's out of stock with me. And I just noticed, through looking at the data, that I would get customers looking at a product or trying to purchase a product that was out of stock on the main brand's website. And you could just see, right? They probably went to the brand's website and then came to me to see if I had that product in stock. And that just became an issue. Another, major issue it's just trust, right? When you're dealing with high ticket items, the amount of investment you need to put into trust is higher. And that's easier to do if you have a personal affinity or love to the product you're selling. Imagine if you're selling electric recreational vehicles, but you're a bike rider, you own electric vehicles and skateboards, and you absolutely love them and you ride them every day, then the effort to build trust and become a thought leader in this niche becomes easier, right? If it's not something you are personally invested in, it becomes more of a challenge. And when you're dealing with high ticket items, that is something you need to invest in. And after speaking with different people within, the world of e-commerce, the question just became, apparent. Like, is this something you care about enough, or do you see enough of an ROI that you will either learn to love it, or will just put the investment in building the trust? Think about it this way. This is why brands hire influencers and actors, right? They're essentially mercenaries that are paid to have passion, right? And that's the thing. If you're selling a high-ticket item, you need to bring a value add. You need to be able to build trust, either through teaching, through adding, the human element. You can't just ask people to pay more money. You need to be willing to give something for that money. And then the last two real big takeaways were, one, since each of the brands I'm working with is a brand, they're not just a supplier, they're a brand. They're trying to grow their brand. They have their own website where they sell their product, right? In that model, now I'm competing with each of their websites. And it's just not ideal, right? Because in most cases, and I would do the same thing. If I want to buy a product, I often go to the brand's website first. Now, if they're out of stock, I might look other places. And I found that that's what often happened. A person would inquire of a product that was out of stock on the brand's website, and now they're looking for another place to buy it. But in this case, if they're out of stock, I'm out of stock. And that just became kind of a problematic model for me. And then lastly, in this case, I chose the right niche because I identified a growing commerce category, but I did not, let's say, scientifically choose my products, right? I would just got brands that were willing to sign on, and I began to add all of their products to my website. And I spent a lot of time building out and doing the layouts and the design work for all of these products without really testing to determine if the product that they had was a product that people wanted to buy. And this was just a huge time sink. It was a huge time waste, right? Because just because a brand has, I want to sell e-bikes, and this brand has e-bikes, it doesn't mean that that particular style of e-bike is something that people are actually buying. And ideally, you want to do a little bit more testing before you spend all of the time and energy to build really comprehensive design. So a lot of products that I ended up advertising, paying for ads, and building layouts for, in retrospect, did not get a lot of traction. And, the lesson there is, in every step of the journey when it comes to commerce, I think you need to be testing, validating, and validating, so that when you find a product that's validated and that people actually want, then it's worthwhile to go all in on design, advertising, marketing, etc. Otherwise, you end up wasting time and really end up wasting money. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, because there were some other key takeaways within the vein of just advertising, how it works, and really the pros and cons of it. But we'll talk about that in Draxx Life version 1, business number 2. So we left off really running through the key takeaways from EV Lifestyles and identifying some of the problems we foresaw in trying to scale this business. And right now, it's been running for 2-3 months, so we're at a point where we have to decide, is it worth continuing and trying to tackle some of these obstacles, or is it time to pivot and close up shop? And for me, it really came down to two key questions. One was, am I the person to try to solve these problems and try to make this business work? Do I care enough about what I'm selling? Is it worth it to really climb these mountains to try to overcome these obstacles? Because they're not insurmountable. Someone could solve them, but that doesn't mean I need to be the one to solve them. The second question was, is there a world in which you would ever want to hold inventory of these products? Right? There's nothing stopping me from finding my own supplier, my own manufacturer, and putting my brand on these items. The biggest question is, do I ever see myself doing that, making that financial outlay, and then holding inventory, or outsourcing that inventory to, let's say, Amazon? And for me, honestly, the answer was no. I couldn't see myself doing that. So there you go. It's time to close up shop and pivot. So I decided to continue to try e-commerce and to continue to try to make drop shipping work. And really, my overall goal for this whole journey was to make money. Let's be honest. But the secondary goal is to, at the very least, continue to improve and not make the same mistakes over and over again, right? I don't like to quit. I don't like to fail. But there's no harm in quitting or failing if, you're getting closer every time, right? You don't want to waste time on a sinking ship. So as long as I'm getting closer to my goal every time, we're good. So we decided. So we're going to continue to do e-commerce. We're going to continue to do drop shipping, but we need to, make some changes. So the first big change was we're not going to do high ticket items. We're going to move towards medium ticket items that involve less trust, and give me more flexibility, right? Because for a consumer, right, a buyer, it's easier for someone to buy something that's $50, $100, $200, more so than it is to buy something that's $1,000 or $2,000. There's a lot less trust. And then for me as a seller, it's easier for me to be able to, let's say, give someone a new product if there's any type of issue, handle returns, and then also hold inventory in the future, right? If I find an item that people really like, if the item is, medium in price, I'm more likely to answer the question of, will I hold inventory? Yeah, probably I will. Or outsource that holding of inventory to Amazon. The other big change was, instead of doing a niche like e-bikes, we're going to really focus on brand building. Because my takeaway is that with products online, the same product is sold by many people, right? I think that's true of high-end items and low-end items. If you have a kind of a discerning eye and you really pay attention, you see the same items coming up under many different brand names off of many different stores. And again, really the important part, the takeaway is that brand building is so important, telling a story, right? Gucci is the Gucci purse of today is not the same as the Gucci purse of 20 years ago. It's not made in the same place. The material is probably different. The design is different, but Gucci is still Gucci. How you feel when you buy into that brand is important, and that's what has kept them around year after year. Their products evolve and change, but the brand stays the same. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how human beings are. We feel a certain way when we buy items. Our items that we purchase are not just out of necessity. They make us feel a certain way. So this is what led me to start Draxx Life, and this is really the story of Draxx Life version 1. So first off, what were the improvements? We needed to improve off of our previous, takeaways, right? We needed to learn and adapt. So the big ones were, 1, we need to cut costs. Do not pay for a problem that you don't have yet, right? I was paying for solutions to problems that were not problems yet. I was paying for subscriptions to, AI chatbots, to advanced business phone with different features, to email marketing subscriptions. I didn't have many phone calls. I didn't have many people contacting me via these chatbots. I didn't have a large newsletter campaign. I don't have all of these contacts. So why am I paying for these? If that problem emerges down the road, I'll pay for it then. But for now, let's be lean. We identified that we're going to focus on brand building a brand and building a story, and that's more important than the actual products. We decided that we're going to sell medium ticket items that someone will be willing to buy via a social media ad or a social media post. And then also we really needed to find ways to automate. That was the key takeaway from the previous iteration. We need tools to automate. So with automation, we quickly identified a solution, a way we could solve this problem. And the beautiful part about the internet is that any problem someone has had, someone else has solved. And one of the solutions that we tried here, was to use two services, let's say. We use AliExpress to represent our supplier, because that's a huge marketplace of products. And then we implemented a third-party software that would bridge our supplier, AliExpress, with our front-end store on Shopify. And now we've removed the human in the middle, so that if you, a customer, buy an item from me, I've vetted that product, I've bought it, I've done samples, I've done my own images, and so forth. But when you buy that product, this middleware, this interface, is going to then queue up the order with my supplier, AliExpress, and automatically queue it all up and execute the sale. And then we'll also maintain contact with my customer, letting them know, hey, your product is on its way. Hey, your product is shipped, so forth and so on. So now we've removed the human in the middle, and we've moved towards a more of an automated system, which was a huge, huge change. Another area we wanted to improve upon was marketing. So in the previous iteration, we had social media set up, limited social media, but we had accounts. but we weren't really feeding into them. We weren't creating content. And we had Google Ads. So with this iteration, we wanted to lean more into marketing. So we created all of the different social media channels, but we actually began to feed into them and create content for them. YouTube, I repurposed a podcast and made it into a video podcast. Now we can create shorts that can be on TikTok. We're posting on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, X. And now we have content. Now we have vehicles to generate organic traffic, which was important. With the previous iteration, we used Google Ads, but for this Draxx Life iteration, we were going to focus on using meta ads and really, again, lean into social media and learn what it has to offer. So immediately, once you turn on ads and get everything running, you start to get traffic, and we started to get orders. And like anything else, quickly we begin to see the errors and the issues and the weak points in this system. So first, right, we had achieved a higher degree of automation, which is good. But there's also some pitfalls with this. The one thing is that we no longer have a relationship with any of our suppliers, right? AliExpress is, in a sense, a marketplace of many suppliers. And there's been no prior communication, so there's a huge degree of trust on my part. I'm trusting that they're just going to facilitate and do what they're supposed to do, and that their quality is good. The other issue is that, like Amazon is a marketplace of many different small businesses, AliExpress is a marketplace of small businesses. So if you buy 4 products from me, theoretically, you could be sourcing those products from 3 different small businesses that have 3 different degrees of quality, of how they package, how they ship, etc. So we're losing some of our cohesion. We're losing the ability to really have good quality assurance. The other issue is that even though we have these automated tools, the system is not 100% reliable. Like, software can fail. So prices were not always updated, so that you could run into the situation where on Monday when you queued up a product, the margins were perfect, but by Friday the prices have changed because that business needed to change their prices. And now your margins are less, and in some cases they're negative. I had more than one situation where a customer bought something from me and it actually cost me money because I did not notice that the price had changed. And ideally, that's an issue because in scaling, right, I'm not going to always be able to pay attention and notice if a price changes. And if the system is not doing that for me correctly 100% of the time, there are situations where you could get 1,000 orders of that particular product and maybe be out $1,000 because of your own mistake. The other issue with the brand was that the brand was a little bit too broad. Like, I'm trying to focus on building a story, but the products I'm selling run the gamut of protein shakes to furniture to notebooks. And if I'm honest, if I was to look at that store, I would ask the question of, what are you? Who are you? I don't get it. And also, why don't I just buy this product from Amazon? Why am I going to take a shot on you when I can get 2-day delivery from Amazon? And the key takeaway is, if you're going to build a brand, you really have to have a strong, cohesive story where even if maybe someone can find that product on Amazon, they want to buy it from you. It becomes a want to, not a need. I want to do this. I want to have this relationship with you because of the way you make me feel, because I want to support you, etc. And then really the last thing was I began to really experiment with ads. And, I am in no way an expert in ads. There are definitely people that are almost scientific with it. But to me, it's a very strange equation, right? You ask the question of, if you stop running ads, will you lose all of your traffic to your store? Or what percentage of your traffic will you lose? Like, do you have no organic traffic? And I think for a lot of businesses, that's exactly how it is. It is an equation where they know if they spend so much money on ads, right, and that they're changing their ads, they're swapping out products, they have different copy. Really, they're just playing this game like at a casino, that they think or that they trust that in the end their percentages will be in their favor. And to me, it just seemed like a very strange relationship, like gambling, where the house is always going to win. if a customer clicks on my ad, regardless of if they ever make a purchase with me, I'm paying money to Meta in this case, right? And that's just a very strange relationship where you are so dependent on that platform's ability to shoot your ads out and also to have enough of a wallet of money to pay for those ads, that if you don't have that degree of cash flow, you're at a huge detriment, right? Or if you stop paying ads or the algorithm changes, will that completely eliminate your traffic? So that's going to lead me into a deeper conversation in Draxx Life V2, where we kind of begin to tackle this idea of ads and how ads, the strength and the weakness of them, especially in relation to organic social media followings. But we'll tackle that with Draxx Life V2. Okay, so here we are. We're in Draxx Life V2. So real quick, let's just do a recap. We've made improvements from EV Lifestyles to Draxx Life version 1, right? One of the key improvements was automation. We really wanted to focus on building a system that's automated, that's not so human dependent. And we really wanted to focus on more brand building. We also learned there were some errors, there were some mistakes, there were some gaps in this fully kind of automated system. So with V2, right, we want to continue to grow, to improve. We wanted to lean more, even more into brand building, really try to emphasize the use of social media and creating content. We also really wanted to focus on making a choice. With V1, we're a general store. We were selling all sorts of different items. We had protein bottles and mugs and teacups and coffee pots and all kinds of things. With this, we wanted to really just make a decision, what are we? Who are we, right? When you look at our website, does all of our imagery, does all of our copy align with the products? With V1, no, it's there was a disconnect. So I just decided we're going to be a clothing brand, right? Why not? Why not be a clothing brand? It more aligns with our imagery, with our style, etc. Now, with this, I have to admit, I constantly make the same mistake, right? I constantly lean on my intuition, right? I assume people will like something that I like. I assume what I identify as a problem is a problem that other people have, or that if I provide a solution, other people will pay for that solution. So with this iteration, I really wanted to try to stop doing that thing. And that means I needed to find a way to actually validate my intuition, right? What am I going to sell in the store? How do I determine what people will buy? And right, there are subscriptions you can pay for. There are services that try to use some form of metric to help you find out what products are trending. But another easy way is to just identify who your competitors are, right? Who else is selling the products that I want to sell? Because if they are, that's usually a good sign. So what I ended up doing was just try to build a list and find and research online clothing brands that kind of matched my aesthetic. What is the style that I want to sell in my store? And here's the thing. Often people think that competitors or competition is a reason not to do something. In reality, it's the greatest form of validation, right? It tells you something very clearly. It says, hey, your idea is actually a good idea because someone else had it. And if they've been doing it before you, it means they're making money. Because at the end of the day, people don't do things that don't make money. They don't sell stuff online for a long period of time unless that thing sells. So if you see a product being sold that you like and you want to sell, it's usually a good sign that maybe you're on the right track. So that's what I did this time. I tried to find competitors that are selling products that I would want to sell. And I use that as a form of validation. Okay, if you've been selling for a long time, if you're an established, small clothing brand that's been around for the last 10 years, well, that tells me that there's a good chance that I could do this, right? What one person has done, another can do. And often I think the reality is that most of the clothing items that you see, for example, they don't hire a designer to make them. They find a manufacturer that's already making them. So that tells me that there's a good chance I could find this product if I like it and just sell it under my name. And the thing is this, if you line up 2-3 competitors, you'll find that they're already doing this with each other, because you'll see the same item sold on all of their stores, or a different variation of the item. But essentially, it's the same archetype, same type of jacket, same type of shirt. And the other feature I needed to solve was automation, right? I had automated the system almost 100%, but there were also glaring problems with it. I was losing, right? With EV Lifestyles, there was the personal touch. I had relationships. With Draxx Life V1, there were no relationships, and it was automated, and I had to trust everything worked. And if the system broke down, it could cost me money. So with V2, I needed to find some hybrid solution. So again, you go on the internet and you try to find solutions. And inadvertently, I found someone through Reddit who was, ran a small business in China as a side project. That was essentially what I needed. They would act as a buyer for me, right? Just like many clothing brands, they have buyers, big clothing brands, who are out there sourcing and finding products. It's advantageous if the products that you're sourcing from are in China, that you have someone that you have a personal relationship with who you can trust to find the products that you need. And this kind of solved both my problems, because I have a system, a piece of software that will allow this team to integrate with my system, to handle orders automatically, to handle the shipping, to update my customers. But I also now have a team that I can reach out to, that I can talk to. If there's an issue, I can get in contact with. So now I have, to some degree, the best of both worlds. I also get a lot more features, right? I have someone who can provide QA for me. If a product is bought from one of these different sellers in China, manufacturers, I wouldn't know that it was damaged till it reached my customer. Now I have a line of defense, a QA team that can check the product to see if it's in good condition. If it's not in good condition, we're not going to send it to my customer. I also now have the ability to consolidate an order. So if you are my customer and you buy 4 or 5 items, before that would be 4 or 5 different packages that are sent at 4 or 5 different times. And now I have one team that will wait to gather all of the product, and then we'll ship it out at one shot. The shipping times will be 100% accurate, because they're the ones inputting it and executing the shipment. If I want to use my own packaging, they can put the product into my own packaging, etc. And we're just moving towards a greater degree of personalization, brand building, and overall professionalism. Because if you're a customer and you buy something, you want that product to be in good condition, whatever the product is, right? You accept that that's the price, but you also accept that the product will get to you in the time that you expect, and also at the degree of quality that you've come to expect. And with this current iteration, I think we're moving closer to that. Now, it'll always be the best to have the products yourself, right? Because then you have complete control. But I think we're getting closer to the best case scenario for this particular fulfillment model. Now, where I'm at now is that I'm trying to find the products, right? I'm trying to slow down the process. I've given up the idea of get rich quick. I never really believed it, but I understand that this will take longer. And rather than, trying to throw a lot of paint on the wall and hoping it sticks, let me take the time to actually find products that people actually want. And an easy way, or a good way to do that, is to actually just post products on your website. They don't even need to be able to sell. Just to be able to easily track what people are paying attention to. What are they looking at? What am I getting the most traffic on? Because rather than me guessing what you want, you can show me what you want. And if I see that a particular jacket or a shirt gets a lot of visits, or someone inquires about it, or someone tries to buy it even though it's out of stock, I can now, be assured that I should go source that product. People are interested in it. These people would have purchased it if I had it. And that way I can more strategically determine where I should invest time in designing, having photographs taken, buying samples, etc. The last big takeaway was really this relationship between marketing and ads. Like, I stopped running ads. Right now, while I have been reassessing and kind of revamping V2, I've essentially put my store behind a newsletter. So you can subscribe, but you can't really see any of the products. And what's interesting is that in this time, I haven't stopped really with social media. So I still produce my podcast. I still make clips of it that I post on YouTube and on TikTok. And I have my Instagram. I have Facebook. And what it's been interesting is that I have continued to get traffic on my site. And I would almost guess that I have somewhat similar traffic to what I paid for in ads. And the only answer to that is that either these people are stumbling across my site, or if these social media channels are the things navigating people to my site. And the interesting reality is just that these things don't cost me any money. Not really. They're not ads. Someone has consumed some of my content and it's led them to my store. And it's kind of proven the reality that ads are like sugar, right? They'll get you going. They'll get people on your site, especially if you're new. But once you quit them, they're going to burn out quick. And unless you have another mechanism to kind of convert to organic traffic, you're really stuck in this infinite loop, this casino game that may or may not work out for you. So in this final segment, we're just going to kind of highlight the key takeaways and the final lessons, and we'll leave it at that. Okay, we're almost done. We've come to the end. I hope you have listened to this at least a 2x speed. But just to recap, we're going to talk about just final lessons, and there's a few. One is that marketing is king, right? That was my biggest takeaway, honestly. Marketing is king, whether you're dealing with an e-commerce, a physical product, or a SaaS product, right? The story you're able to tell, the brand, the feeling you're able to emote, the community you can build is the most important thing. Because at the end of the day, many people are selling the same products, and really the only thing that distinguishes them from each other is the community. It is the packaging. It is the brand. It is the story. That is, in effect, the most important part. Like, unless you've invented something brand new, some new form of technology, most businesses are emulating each other. And that is the distinguishing factor. It's what is the story? How do I feel when I join that community, when I buy a product? Measure twice and cut once, right? You want to move quickly, but you don't want to move too quickly. I ran into this problem, many times. Like, do market research. Don't skip out on it. I was doing all of this design work, making all of these product pages for products I hadn't really tested to see if people actually wanted. You don't have to do the 50% is okay, right? You can do something that's almost there, so that you have have something you can use to test. And then in that testing, you're going to determine if it's worthwhile going all in and creating a final product. Like, don't create a final product when a minimal viable product will do, right? Don't waste your time, right? Time is one of the most precious resources, because all you can do is spend it. You can't get it back. So make sure you're spending it on something that's going to give you an ROI. Now, it sounds contradictory, but iterate quickly. Like, there is something to be said about being able to move from idea phase to implementation as fast as possible. Because, again, you don't want to waste time. Like, you need to be able to get yourself positioned so you can test if an idea is worthwhile, if it's worth investing, your time and energy. And, EV Lifestyles, I made this mistake. Like, I ran EV Lifestyles for 2 or 3 months, but it took me like a year to get it up and running. I was working at the time. I was, working, and then part of the time I would be tweaking and improving, and I just took way too much time. I procrastinated, right? I thought, planned too much. I was trying to create the perfect solution rather than just trying to get something up and out. And the reality is, I probably would have come to the same conclusion. I probably would have figured out this is not a good idea. It's not viable. It's time to pivot. But I would have found out much sooner. So, like, that's very important. Like, you want to find out if your idea is worthwhile and if it's worth, investing more energy in. And you want to find out as quick as possible so that you can pull the safety valve and get out as soon as you realize that it's not worth your time. Only pay for what you need, right? Only pay for solutions to problems you actually have. It's kind of common sense, but I did it, right? You want all of the bells and whistles. You want to emulate, the big store, the big brand. And the reality is that they have problems you don't have. So they have solutions they're paying for that you don't need, but they do, right? You don't need this, chat application, if you're not getting anyone that's interacting with you via chat, you don't need, this exclusive email marketing tool for your campaigns if you don't have anyone to send emails to, right? Like, that's just the reality. And that doesn't mean that tomorrow when that becomes a problem, you can't purchase that solution, but you don't need it now, because we live in a subscription world. Like, if you pay for something, you're paying for it whether you need it or not, month to month. So hold off, save the money, and pay for solutions to problems you actually have. And then lastly, learn social media. Like, to me, that was the biggest takeaway. Social media is like so important. I never thought about it that way, right? I avoided it. But the reality is that, like, social media is such a game changer, because here's the thing with ads is it's like a casino, right? The house will always win. The house will always win. You hope that you also win, but they're always going to win. Every time someone clicks on your ad, they're going to get paid. It's a question of if that click turns into a conversion where you also get paid. And again, you have to ask yourself the question, if you turn off your ads, does all of your traffic evaporate? And that just shows you how beholden and connected and tied to those platforms you are, right? You need to be able to generate organic traffic. And to me, I found, with my site, I have not been running ads as I've kind of moved from Draxx Life V1 to V2. I even have hidden my site. Like, it's kind of behind a newsletter wall now that you can subscribe to. But I still get traffic. And I would almost guess that I have the same amount of traffic, maybe spread out, but that I did when I was running ads. And that's why, because I've continued to, add to my content on YouTube specifically, and different reels, and adding it to TikTok. So I'm getting traffic somehow, and I'm not paying for ads. And here's the thing, like, if you equate it to nutrition, right? Ads are very useful. And if you have deep pockets, they will buy you traffic. But they're like sugar. Like, they're like quick burning. They'll give you that burst of energy. But the moment they're not long lasting. So if you stop paying for ads, the consequences, you're going to see your traffic diminish. So you need something that's long lasting, that can give you rewards later on. Like, you need your fat, you need your carb, you need your protein. And in this game, I think it really is social media. And if you pay attention, you'll notice there's a transformation, in my opinion, taking place, where you look at these social media platforms and you see that there's kind of a concerted effort by tech CEOs and just business owners to really become forward focused, like to really invest in creating a brand of their own. And I think the point is that they've all realized a lot of people have been doing this already, but that's in the long run more beneficial. Think of it this, like, if you go on The Rock's Instagram, The Rock has his own tequila brand. How many of his posts in some way are highlighting a brand or a product that it's either his, that he owns, or he's affiliated with? Now, I'm pretty sure those posts don't cost him any money. They're not an advertisement. They are technically an advertisement, right? But they're not within the platform of Meta, an actual ad. So that post, which is advertising or highlighting a product that he's affiliated with, will run 365, 7 days a year. He has so many followers. People are going to see it all the time. And he will get money through that, right? Like, that will lead some to go buy that product of which he is affiliated with. And in this case, he wins all the time, right? It doesn't cost him money to make that post, right? Whereas if he made an ad, it would cost him money. And, that is kind of like a crazy thing. Not only will he save money on ads, generate new sales, but also, since he has so many people, so many eyes on his feed, that those platforms, Meta, for example, will pay him, right, money, because other people will advertise on his feed. So now he's getting paid to market. Right? And that's kind of an amazing thing. That's why this whole influencer model it might be here to stay, because think about it. I normally would be paying money in ads, but maybe I don't need to do that, right? If I can build my social media following or co-op someone else's, I get the benefit of advertising without paying the negative of paying for ads, and I win, right? Or at very least, I don't lose, and that is like a crazy game changer. And I think the secret's out. This is no secret, but you see it more and more frequently. It's an interesting thing that more and more of these CEOs, especially these tech CEOs, there was a time you didn't know who any of these people were. And in the last few years, they're all making a concerted effort to be on podcasts, to post, to be on X, to be on, all these places, to be on YouTube. And for the audience, you, the consumer, to know who they are. And it's not because they're bored. It's because they've realized this is the newer form of advertising. And if people know them and trust them, then when it comes time for them to market something, you will buy that thing. So that's in a nutshell my 7.5 month journey through e-commerce. Definitely was not, when I add up the dollars and cents, definitely was not a profitable time in numerically speaking, right? When we look at the finances, I definitely lost, but the knowledge and wisdom that were acquired were invaluable, right? Because you get the chance to see really how the world works, right? Like, there is the world that we think, and then there's the real world, and they're not always the same. And until you kind of poke behind the curtain, because you have to, you don't always see how the things operate. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching to this point. Hopefully you ran at 2x speed, and hey, have a good night.